Hey guys, hope you are well. As you probably know, success verdict is in the case of Philip Campus versus Danny. So you probably already know that by now, but in case you didn't, good news. Now it's 2 for 2 in terms of successfully beating back the Scientology restraining orders. So hopefully you saw my interview with Dorothy Gibbons White. Also, if you guys do want to support, please consider supporting, because I flew from Denver, flying from Denver today. So got a Cash App and Venmo and GoFundMe, so that would mean a lot. But thank you regardless for simply watching. That's what really counts. So long story short, I'm not going to do too much of an analysis because we've been analyzing this the whole entire time. But the whole crux of the case simply centered around two incidents, with them being jettisoned by the scooter, and Campus saying, which resulted in an arrest, that Danny was assaulting him while he was on his scooter, and then a bunch of words that weren't even that hardcore uttered by Jay and Danny as well on May 9th. So I kind of felt like they had this in the bag because, again, Streets, this last case, was a little more vitriolic in his language, a little more aggressive. It certainly came off as poised in the stand, but Danny comes off as more likable. So I kind of figured he'd elicit the sympathy from the judge, and the judge would kind of see him as this very reasonable guy, not necessarily a gangster, which is the exact words that Kendrick Moxon used. So we'll just go right into the verdict. I try to get it as best I can. Again, I'm changing the names. Instead of petitioner versus respondent, too long for me to write, so I write Phil and Danny. The judge is not actually saying Phil or Danny. I'm saying Phil or Danny. The judge is saying respondent versus petitioner, which I think is harder to follow because sometimes you get that confused and mixed up. So I'm swapping that out. I melded some sentences together because there's no way to write the full thing, but I wrote probably 65% of it. So if you want to get generally what the verdict is, you're in good hands. The court considered the credibility of both the witnesses and the video footage, says Judge Scully. The court found that the testimony of Danny is more credible than Phil's. It seems like Phil was searching for answers to give, the right answers to give. Answers that did not seem spontaneous or honest. On the May 9th incident, Phil says, "I try to avoid Danny, but I can't get to church." Yet Phil says he made arrangements with the church to secure an alternate route. He testified he went to church the same amount after he had the RO versus before he had the temporary RO. Also from May 9th, those interactions were started by Phil. Phil came up close to Danny. He was smiling at him, and his actions could be interpreted as taunting. Phil went up and down the street as though he was wanting to start an interaction. Phil bucked himself up to confront, which the court couldn't really understand why. If we take Phil's explanation as valid, it's not consistent with the allegations that Phil said Danny frightens him, after saying he tries hard to avoid Danny and wants to be accompanied when he's in his presence. The May 9th situation where Phil says Danny and Denver J, he just said the other person, Denver J stalked and shouted, "I was asking for trouble," quote unquote, is inconsistent with video footage. Phil's scooter is essentially akin to a Lime scooter or a Razor scooter. It's not a scooter that's used for balance or for mobility issues or for medical issues. The court finds the phrase, "I was holding the scooter for balance," misleading. For Danny's credibility, he tried to run him over, quote, the court heard, "No, he didn't hit me though." Remarking on the though is not necessarily relevant. We found Danny's testimony credible. For granting the restraining order, there oftentimes includes violence, as Phil was trying to claim. Danny has given no credible threats. As the two parties came close to each other, Phil moved the scooter in a lunging manner. Phil's back issue claims are not consistent with the video evidence. He never exclaimed at that moment that his back was in pain. It's possible to take time for an injury to appear, but Phil has not proven proof of further pain. For threats of violence on May 9th, the court finds no threats were made at all. The words Danny said, "Oh, there you are. Guess who's here? Are you going to call the cops on me again? Just move on, buddy. Keep on walking," are not considered threats. Almost all comments Phil said were threats were spoken by someone else, not the respondent. Overall, the court finds that Phil was approaching Danny unnecessarily and in an accosting manner. There also has to be a course of conduct from the respondent. It can be counting for harassment, for example, but for harassment, the court finds that element is not there. This leads to the March 9th event as the only other event in question, which we have litigated. The court denies this restraining order request. That's all she wrote. So I'm going to take a break from Scientology, guys. I hate to do it to you, but sometimes you got to do cases that care about you, that you care about. So I will be out in Kansas. If you want to Google Marion, Kansas police chief. Really interesting case. So I will be doing I got to fly to Denver today, then drive 7 hours to Kansas, and then I'll have a report for you. You might hate me and say, screw you for doing stuff that's not related to Scientology. You might unsubscribe. So I'm taking a big risk. My guess is once I go to Marion, I'm going to lose 300 to 400 subscribers, because some people just hate when you do, they just hate you if you do a topic that's not related to the topic they subscribe to you for. So I warn you in advance, I will be losing subs, but it's in my heart. So that's what I'll be doing, and I will catch you guys on the flip side, and I will try to be back for Josiah. I'll guarantee that. And Henry as well. Bye-bye, guys.